everything that we're doing, the way I look at it, is you're taking people on a journey. The journey is from where they are to coming into your world, being a client, a customer, a student, a member. So if you're standing, let's use this in a three-dimensional, like 3D space. And Heather is standing on the far side of the room. And getting her to the opposite side of the room is like becoming a customer. What a lot of people are doing is they're standing on one side of the room and then they're just yelling, "Hey, over here, what are you doing? Come on over." And like, you're like, no, but I'm going to come over to you. I'm going to stand by your side and we're going to be at the same location. And I'm going to take a step forward and I invite you to take a step forward. And then we're going to take another step. And together we're going to walk to the other side of the room. And this is called leading. We're leading our audience because you're a leader. You have to be a market leader to actually be the person that's bringing in the sales.
This is the podcast for the entrepreneur who wants to make a big impact, who doesn't shy away from hard work, but also wants to enjoy life along the way. Hi, I'm Heather Sager, former executive turned entrepreneur, and I've spent the last 20 years working with premium brands on sales, marketing, and communication. And I've learned that when you become a magnet with your message, you only need a hint of hustle to achieve your goals. Get ready to be inspired and ignited each week with tangible strategies on sales, speaking, marketing, and so much more. This is the Hint of Hustle podcast. Let's go. Well, hey friend, welcome back to another episode. We have an incredible interview today with my friend, James Wedmore. He is my coach, my business mentor. I am a member of his coaching program, Next Level, as I have been for the last 2 years. I've talked about him frequently over the last few weeks, including I had the chance to go to his live retreat a few weeks ago in Arizona and then meet up with a few business owners in Sedona alongside him creating content. He's just all around a great guy, and I love his approach to business, and you're going to love this interview today. Give you a little quick update around what's happening in the Sager world. I've been talking the last couple of weeks that life has been very busy this spring. And I say that knowing a few episodes back, I talked about how I don't love the term busy, but y'all, this week I have been feeling it. So I'm recording this introduction for this episode the Friday before the show airs. And I have been in bed for the last 2 days. In fact, I literally just got out of bed just for one call and to record this love note to you. We were down the last 2 days with a stomach bug that my littlest brought home from preschool and just blew through our house. If you know how that works, I won't get into details. It was a couple rough days, but luckily, and I'm so grateful for this, all of that happened right after a really, really big deadline we had been trying to meet for the last month happened. And that deadline was getting professional photos taken of our house to put our house on the market. We are officially moving across the state to Bend, Oregon, and we are so excited. It's happening this summer. We already found a rental home. We've signed the agreement. We move the first week of July. We are so freaking stoked. But the big part of that is we have to sell our home. And we've been in this home for 7 years. And as you can imagine, you accumulate a lot of things over that time, especially with 4 humans and 2 dogs living in the house. So we have been, if you've been following on Instagram stories, you've probably been laughing with me over the last, 3 months as I've been decluttering and pretending like I am Joanna or Clea from the Home Edit, trying to make things pretty and organizing. And the sprint of the final week, there was a lot to do, but we survived and we made it. And oh my gosh, the house looks incredible. So I'm just going to say this, since the theme of the show, the title of the show is Hint of Hustle. I always talk about some seasons you are going to go through intense hustle And some seasons you're going to be less busy. And in those seasons, might I advise that you don't try to fill up your plate because you think you have to be busy. If there is a time and season where you get to have a little lighter schedule, embrace it. Because you and I both know that there are going to be those seasons where business and family and personal stuff is just going to pile on. And I mean, sometimes it's stressful, but sometimes it's just the way it is. Like, I don't find it stressful. I just find that that's life, and I embrace it. But I'm definitely in that season of busyness, and I'm looking forward to this summer where I have much bigger opportunities for rest and play as I take some time off with my friends, or with my family and 2 friends. We're going to be in a new place, so I got to make some new friends, which I'm sure I'll talk about that here in the coming months around what it's like as an adult to make friends in a new city, which as an introvert, that sounds absolutely terrifying, but I'm committed to making it happen. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you today that I don't know. I think sometimes we think that life is always going to be this constant stream of we're always going to be it one way, but it always changes. There's going to be busy seasons. There's going to be slow seasons. There's going to be seasons where you're really focused on your health. There'll be seasons where you're focused on your family. There'll be seasons where you're super focused on your business. And one of the things I love most about being an entrepreneur is I get to create and design my day to fit where I'm at with my life. And that's one of the reasons why I think this conversation today, this interview is so important, is because we constantly need to be thinking about, are we designing the businesses that really serve the lifestyle we want and the one that we desire? And for me, even still, I love my business. I love the level that I'm at. I love the people that I work with. And I have ambitions to do bigger things, but not at the sacrifice of my health or my family. So I'm excited about what we're talking about today. I'm also really excited because James has his annual event coming up in June, starting June 1st, The Rise of the Digital CEO. It's his 3-part live training series where he teaches you the thinking, the actions, what to do to really rise to that level of becoming the digital CEO and designing the business that you really love that fits into your life. So if you want to grab your free ticket to that, you can grab the link in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this today. Be sure to get registered for that. I will be there with bells on, and I'll be hosting the Digital CEO Green Room, which is my private pop-up group just for people who register for the Rise of the Digital CEO through me. So if you want to learn how to get your pass backstage for the Rise experience, be sure to check out the link in the show notes. But for now, let's go ahead and jump straight into the interview. All right, James, let's officially jump to it. Welcome to the Hint of Hustle podcast. I'm so thrilled you're here.
I'm back.
You're back. I mean, technically you're back. Technically, I renamed the show since the last time you were here. But yeah, we are at like 200 episodes here on the podcast, and you are a 2-timer in a good way. I also think that's maybe a negative thing to call someone.
This is a second offender. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really good at introductions. By the way, the last time I introduced you, I said a funny, weird thing, and I discovered that you have a different first name that we all know. So that was my favorite way to introduce you.
Did I tell everyone what my real name is?
And we had a whole story about it. So y'all, if you missed episode 151, James's first appearance on the show, you got to go back and listen to his real name because it's actually not James.
And it's not, I'm like trying to like fool people or like, oh, he's changed his name. It's like, no, my parents named me one name and then called me a different name my whole life. And I had a hard time with it. So anyway.
I was like, you blew my mind in the first like 30 seconds. I'm like, I'm already learning new things. This is so great.
Who is this imposter?
All right. So we're going to jump into, I'm highly going to recommend for anyone who missed our last interview, go listen to that interview because it was so good. I was geeking out. I was actually listening to it myself today. There were so many good gems in it. So that would be a really good follow-up to listening to today's episode. But I want to actually start our conversation today with one of the things we talked about last year. And you had said this phrase, I wrote it down. It was so good. You said that people don't buy from someone they don't see as an expert.
Yes.
Which is so entirely true. So I want to start there. So what do you think is the best way for people today to position themselves as an expert online, especially when they're relatively like new or seemingly unknown?
Yeah. Well, First off, there's a great distinction with this of show versus tell. And the more you try to tell people that you are the expert, that you know what you're talking about, the harder it actually like comes across. Like when I start saying like, trust me, Heather, just trust me, you can trust me. People are like, okay, why do you keep saying that? Right. And instead it's a showing or a demonstration. And that's something, these are one of these like they just kind of disappeared invisible principles that like we need to be talking about if we're going to be doing this. And how do we demonstrate authority? How do we demonstrate expertise? And there's a lot of ways that we do it. Okay. The first way is our own story. Now, the good news is you know your personal story better than anybody. Now, we've lived our story, so we tend to discredit our story and diminish our journey. But there's so much credibility, expertise, and authority in your own journey and how you decide to communicate it, how you decide to present it. And so when I tell the story of where I started in my parents' basement and I wasn't making any sales or anything like that, and then boom, even just start talking about my first sale or my first launch or taking my business to 6 figures, I'm already starting to do that. And so we don't want to minimize that or skip over that part. There's the next piece, which is, people will see you as an authority and expert when you have demonstrated that now, because your story is about producing results for yourself, when now you can also demonstrate that you can produce results for others. And the stories of others, their case studies, their testimonials, their results is one of the most powerful things that we can do. This isn't rocket science, but the amount of people that either aren't doing it enough, or come back to me with that lovely excuse of, what if I don't have any case studies? What if I don't have any testimonials? What if I don't have any results from students? And this is where tough coaching James comes in. And I'm like, then you go out and you freaking get them right now. Because there's no excuse for that. Because if the law of preeminence states that people don't buy coaching content and information from people they don't already perceive as an expert, they can't perceive you as an expert if you can't demonstrate that you can do this for others. And so you better go out and do that. You find a way and you make it happen, and you make it happen fast. Now, there's obviously other ways. One of the other ways is through any type of credibility, credentials, publications, anything that offers a sense of credibility. When you're getting, I say these things, because they're true, as featured in Forbes magazine or Business Insider, I've written articles for them, so I get to do that, or featured on Heather's podcast, boom, instant credibility. And using these things are it's definitely important. Here's another one. This is one of the invisible ones. And I know you'll like this one, how you conduct yourself. 80% of our communication is nonverbal. Notice right now that when I slow down, I get intentional and I pause, your listeners are getting a certain sense of, maybe even on an unconscious level, this guy has something important to say. He knows it's important. He knows it's valuable. He knows his stuff. So I'm going to give one little practical application of this maybe I'm going to give two. I'm going to give two. The first one is anytime you share a sentence, anytime you speak, you're going to have a period at the end of that sentence. All sentences have a period at the end. And every single one of us does one of 3 things at the end of that sentence. We either take it up, we take it down, or we keep it flat. So if I have a sentence like, this is the best piece of advice you'll ever learn, I could sit there and say, this is the best piece of advice you'll ever learn. That's flat. This is the best piece of advice you'll ever learn. I went down. I can also go up. This is the best piece of advice you'll ever learn. And I'm kind of exaggerating these to prove the point. But people don't pay attention to their own language and how they communicate and their own voice and their own unconscious nonverbal communication. And it, my friends, is everything. So when you go up, that's what we do when we have a question. Hey, Heather, can I ask you a question? We go up in our language. So going up when you're trying to make a statement means you're doubting yourself. You question your own authority. You question your own expertise. I think this is good. I think you'll like it. There's doubt. There's uncertainty. There's a lack of you and your personal power. Therefore, this person isn't an authority. And people will be saying, I don't know what it is about this person, but something feels off about them, or I just don't know if I can trust them. Either staying neutral or going down. And this is for a lot of people, this is actually something that we've not been doing. So it has to be this conscious effort of and this is the other hack. We either go up when we're demonstrating and communicating nonverbally insecurity and lack of self-assuredness in ourselves. We go up and we go fast. And the big reason why people go fast, as most of us can figure out, is because they don't like taking up space and time and room. So there are times you'll see this. Sometimes I'm going to talk really fast and I have this really important point and I just want to bam, 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 hit it. And then there's other times where I'm saying, look, hold on, we need to slow it down. And I need to tell you what's up. And people that know their value and know their worth and own that authority have the ability to slow down and take up a bit of space because what they're talking about is important. And these are the invisible factors to demonstrate authority. This is huge. And it is just so, so important because even when we get into anything that we're doing, I want to say it like this. Everything that we're doing, the way I look at it, is you're taking people on a journey. The journey is from where they are to coming into your world, being a client, a customer, a student, a member. So if you're standing, let's use this in a three-dimensional, like 3D space. And Heather is standing on the far side of the room. And getting her to the opposite side of the room is like becoming a customer. What a lot of people are doing is they're standing on one side of the room and then they're just yelling, hey, over here, what are you doing? Come on over. And like, you're like, no, but I'm going to come over to you. I'm going to stand by your side and we're going to be at the same location. And I'm going to take a step forward and I invite you to take a step forward. And then we're going to take another step. And together we're going to walk to the other side of the room. And this is called leading. We're leading our audience because you're a leader. You have to be a market leader to actually be the person that's bringing in the sales. So I'm leading the direction, the conversation, and I'm moving us. Now, if that is the goal, there's going to be all these micro moments where we could lose somebody. And one of the big moments we lose people is the moment they go, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Or they haven't really convinced me. Or they haven't proved it to me. Or there must be a better way, a quicker way, a faster way, or a more simpler way. I'm out. So that's like the big piece. I'm going to share one more thing because this is a big topic. It's an important one. I'm glad you asked it. You usually think I'm going to answer a question in like 2 minutes and I go for 20.
No one thinks that. No one thinks that about you.
Okay, good. Because I don't want any wrong expectations going into this. But let me tell you what some people do that is a don't do when it comes to being an authority. These are the don't do's. Number one, like I said before, avoid the telling. I'm an authority. Trust me. Okay. That just doesn't work. Oh, okay. Well, they said they are, so they must be. I mean, yeah, you'll get like 5% of your audience. There'll be a small segment that just believes it at face value, but most people are very skeptical. You listening here have legitimate and it's totally healthy, normal skepticism. I don't know this guy. Who is this guy? I know you brought him on before, but who is he? Right? That's totally fine. I appreciate a healthy skepticism. Me saying, look, just trust me, okay, doesn't remove the skepticism. So don't do that. It actually just amplifies it. The other thing, and I totally forgot what it was. but it will come back to me. There were two things I was going to share about what not to do about trying to demonstrate authority, and I totally forgot the other one. But
It,
I did give some really important ones about how we can demonstrate it.
well,
With
here's the funny thing is I actually with that creates a great third one is because one of the big mistakes people make is they actually make shit up when they don't know the answer.
Yep,
And that puts you actually on the opposite of an authority status because people
totally,
typically know when you're bullshitting.
yes, absolutely, and I did remember it. It usually comes
Okay.
back to me.
Perfect. Go.
People think that in order to demonstrate that they're an authority, they need to demonstrate how smart they are. And in an effort to show off your brain, you make it complicated. And there's a great quote, and I'm going to pull it up because I love this quote. And it's a quote from Einstein. And it goes like this: Genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. And a lot of people, in an effort to try to prove that they're the authority, make things complicated. And I'm going to give you one of the ultimate hacks. The greatest value and gift that you can give your audience that has them pay attention and pay you is when the value you provide is you make the path and the solution simple and elegant as humanly possible, not complicated. So the adage that I love is, if you want to impress people and let them perceive you as really smart, make it complicated. But if you actually want to help people and have them pay you money for it, make it simple. And that's the choice. So that's a big don't make it overcomplicated.
I love this. Okay, we just geeked out and got a little masterclass here on all things that we love talking around here, which is speaking and delivery and what to do and not to do to look like the authority. So this is wonderful. I have to say, okay, funny thing on the simple part. One of the things I always talk to my students about, which if you listen to the podcast, this will be familiar, is when people like to introduce themselves, people like to sound fancy and smart, and they want to come up with the fancy ways to describe what they do. And one of my favorite activities that I'll use with my clients is I'll say, I want you to say it again, but let's pretend that you're 3 margaritas deep. And how would you say it? And every single time, people always say it more clear. So what we call that around here
but
is
there's a slur.
It's a without the slur, right? But without the slur, but the simpler way. And we call that our margarita message is how do we simplify it? And it always helps, but we have a tendency to overcomplicate things. So I love that you said
Right drunk, edit sober.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It.
I also love that you called it the vocality around how we deliver. This is like a forgotten tactic. It's a forgotten skill that people need to have. If you all were listening and leaning and taking notes, just note we have multiple episodes dedicated to your vocality. So we will link to those in the show notes. So I love that you shouted that out. I want to talk about one of the things that people do when they're building their brand online. So experts, whether they're pivoting from corporate or professional services, but they're building that brand online and wanting to explore this idea of making money online through digital courses. One of the things that I see happens often is people get very excited and distracted about vanity metrics. We get really excited about the idea of growing our following or getting the numbers. And so can you talk a little bit about how you help entrepreneurs measure success and how you have kind of dealt with that whole chasing popularity versus purpose?
Yeah. Well, on one hand, I will say that what gets me so excited about the personal brand and the digital product model is, when I started, especially once we got to 8 figures a year, I really started looking at like, man, I should be like getting smarter about investing and diving into all those topics. And I did, and I got into a bunch of real estate, and it's been a wonderful journey. And I have my investment friends, and I still sit there and I say, we can invest and do all kinds of cool stuff all day long. But my number one asset in my life is my personal brand. And that is so true. You look at like the Elon Musks of the world, love them or hate them, that is irrelevant. He can go start a company. He can go attach his name to a company, and that company will grow because of that. And that is an asset. That is not an asset that you acquire as highly valuable overnight. There's always exceptions, of course. Someone maybe does a TED talk and it blows up and they build a brand around it, and that's wonderful. But I am the tortoise. And in the version I read, the tortoise wins that race. And the brand that I've developed is, 15 years in the making of just consistent. I don't think there's a week that's gone by that I haven't created a piece of content in 15 years. And that's not to intimidate or have anyone shy away from that, but that's because I love doing that. And that is this like momentum, this building here, right? So when you know that, it's always worth the time, whatever time it takes. And it's that notion of like, we're planting seeds and you may not bear that fruit for months or years, but I look back and there's fruit I'm bearing today that are based on seeds I planted years ago. But even when you start out, even if you started today, there's two things I want to bring up. And that number one is we operate from a 90-day model, which means every 90 days, including your first 90 days in business, you should be, I want to say profitable, but at least revenue in the revenue generation from the first 90 days. There can be startup expenses and stuff like that, but we're making money. We're making sales in the first 90 days. And so those are kind of the two things, is that we're operating from 90-day cycles, 90-day outcomes, and that we can get started in that first 90 days. And we have students and clients today that, because they focused more on the strategy of this is a business and business is in business to generate sales and revenue and profits. Otherwise, it's just like a hobby or, like you said, getting popular. There's a lot of influencers out there that are millions and millions of followers and they can't make money. But we have students and clients, and this is what always makes me so like proud and happy, that are 3 to 15,000 followers on Instagram and they're multiple six-figure businesses. Why is that? Well, the first reason why that is because where they put their focus is on the strategy of making sales. And when you have two things in place, number one, an irresistible offer, and number two, the right sales system in place, you don't actually need a lot of people to make a lot of money. And that's really, really, really exciting. And that's one of the big misconceptions people have, is they think like, or maybe they've been told or lied to somewhere along the way, is I have to have 10,000 people before I can launch or get started or get created, or I have to have a certain amount of people on Instagram before I can even do this. It's like, that is ridiculous. And my best favorite example is my own little sister. And my sister, she actually bought my program. Now the funny story is she had it. She didn't know because I gave it to her and she didn't value it. So she decides to buy it. And it wasn't until she bought it that she like put skin in the game for herself. But when she started, like, this is the ultimate worst like circumstance. She had no website. She had no email list. The only people following her on Instagram were friends and family. She had never done a single post for this niche. So she didn't know her niche before she started. She had nothing. And within 60 days, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She's got 2 kids, young little kiddos that are like full-time crazy little rugrats that I love to death. She was homeschooling them, and she was the primary caretaker for my father as he was passing. Her life was swamped. She's not like the stereotypical business owner. She had no previous business, no business experience, nothing, nada. So starting from nothing, she'd never taken another program before. In the first 60 days, she launched her beta program. Her goal was 3. Then she tells me, like, secretly, she goes, actually, it was just 1. Like, if I could just get 1 person, this would have been a win. But her goal was 3. Well, she ends up getting 7. And then 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from her because I wouldn't help her. I was like, you got to go through it. I can't give you special treatment, Jill. I know, what a jerky brother. And she calls me and she goes, I got a problem. I go, what's the problem? She goes, I'm 2 weeks into my first version of my program, my beta program. And all of a sudden, 2 people have reached out and they said, we've heard all these good things about your beta program. We want in. I said, okay, so what's the problem? She's like, what do I do? And I told her, you let them in, silly. And so she did. So she ended up getting 9. Her goal was 3 or 1, and she ends up getting 9. And ever since then, she has been tweaking that offer, raising the price, and plugging in a sales system in place. And that's all she does. And she just launches a couple times a year. And every single time she has doubled sales. And she's building this snowball on her terms, on her pace. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now she's running retreats out in Sedona, charging a couple of grand for those. And she's like, this is freaking life-changing. She's not big on social. If you went, I'm going to look her up right now as we're talking just to prove this. I think I think her biggest growth is she was on my podcast and she got a lot of followers from that. She has today, this is 2 years later, or 1 year, 10 months, 1,936 followers on Instagram. So, and I think when she started, she was at like 1,000. So, it's wonderful to have those big metrics. It's wonderful to reach more people. But you don't need that to get started. You don't need that to have a healthy business. One of our case studies that we just interviewed on my podcast, her name is Angela Jackson. When she joined us inside Business by Design, she was making $2,000 a month. This January, she had her largest month. A year and a half later, it would be a year and 6 months in January. $28,000. She went from $2,000 a month to $28,000 a month. That is life-changing money. She has less than 5,000 followers on Instagram. She's not focused on the popularity. She is focused on the profitability. What I tell my students is the first most important thing we need to do is we need to build the machine. We need to build the machine and then we can fill it. Most people are just trying to get all the people to fill it. It's like they want the gasoline, but they don't actually want the car. And we need to build the car, and then we can improve the car as we go, but then we can fill it with more people and it will continue to grow. But I don't love the idea of running a business for 2 years where you don't make money, where you don't get paid. And that to me is like, why work for free when you can get to sales and profitability and get into it in the first 90 days? So that's like the big first thing I teach. And I've developed a reputation, and I love this. I didn't ask for it. But you know what? I'm here for it. That people say when you're actually ready to get results, James is the person that you go to. And that's because we stop fiddling around. We stop playing with all the little distractions and the noise and the things that can work. But there's a time and place. And it's like, we just got to get you to profitability. We just got to get you to the sale. We got to get you to that. Here's my offer. Here's what it is. Here's what it does. Here's how it helps. Here's how to get it. Are you in? Yes or no? And that can happen faster than you realize. Some people put so much stuff between them and that sale, that breakthrough launch, that breakthrough revenue goal. And it's that stuff you're choosing to put between you and them that will continue to elude you like a carrot on a stick. And you'll keep working, you'll keep going. And it just continues to be further and further away out there in the distance. And we can sit there and actually say, you don't need to do all that right now. Well, my sister did. She just went live on Instagram. She followed our messaging framework and she put the offer out there and she had her people buy. She's like, holy cow. She still doesn't have a website. She didn't even have a sales page for this. And when you create great offer, great messaging, you have a simple sales system, you plug it in, you improve it as you run it, and it will continue to grow. So we do that fast instead of waiting. You know what I mean? So hopefully that makes sense. And I
love that. I think prioritizing the profit piece, I think that's hard a lot of times because people think that there's all these things they have to get ducks in a row in order for the perfect offer, the perfect course, the perfect membership to happen. But that doesn't really come until later. Can you talk about what happens is when someone gets their first offer out, maybe they have a great launch like your sister, maybe they have a less than enthusiastic receiving of that launch. What happens from there is because sometimes people will do your strategy, right? Which is where we rinse and repeat to refine, to learn. But this is where a lot of people get distracted, right? Whether they go back to the drawing board or they come up with new offers or new ideas or new launch strategies. Can you talk about the distraction zone that people go into once they do get to that first losing their launch virginity?
Yeah. Popping your launch cherry. Oh my God.
Yeah. We use that phrase a lot around here.
That's incredible. I am blushing. So Yeah, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a
That's just
first. I have
amazing.
made him
Wow.
speechless.
Wow. That was incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay. It's that kind of
Like
show.
how I just snuck that right at the
Yeah.
end. Like you thought you had that question, and then I just snuck it in.
Yeah. And now that's all I can focus on. I'm like, what was the question? What were we even talking about? Yes. Here's a couple things I'm gonna talk about. There's something I've been saying for years, and people don't like it, but I want you to have what you want. I want you to have that lifestyle. I want you to have the bank account. I want you to have the impact, and I want you to do it on your terms. And so, in order to get what you want, you're going to have to do some things that you don't like to hear. And here's an example of that. What I have noticed to be true is that a lot of what causes success and gets you there is freaking boring. And I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just like the untrained entrepreneur is always chasing what's new and exciting. And we have to have a level of discipline to continue to do some of the things that aren't just being driven by, here's what I'm excited to do today. And this, like, I'm all about following your passion, but there's a difference between following your passion and just doing whatever you feel like today because you feel excited about doing it. Your business is asking for you to develop consistency and discipline. And you can choose, and that's the difference between an amateur and a pro. You can choose to find passion in the discipline. The things I'm talking about today, I've talked about them before. Our launches, our offers, I've done them before. But I also know what's on the line every time I talk about those things. There could be one person here that hasn't heard this that it's going to make a difference for. And that's what I choose to remind myself of every single time, which has it be enthusiastic for me. So your greatest weapon, your secret weapon that you didn't know you had is time. It's consistency. Consistency breeds momentum. And what I teach my students is they can take one product to $1 million. And that's just the beginning. What happens is you create the offer, you make some money, and you go, oh, I'll do that again. And you create another offer and you make a little money. And then all of a sudden you wake up, and I was guilty of this. Like, you have 10 offers, you have 10 products, and you're not making that much more money, but you're definitely working a lot more. More offers doesn't mean more money. It means more workload. Simplicity and elegance. We're going to go back to that theme of simplicity. And I have so many students that have taken their business from one product to 1 million. We just had Nick Smith on the podcast. He is a pilot teaching people how to get their pilot's license. And that's what he teaches. It's $250. He's at 30K months right now, all autopilot, $30,000 a month with a $250 product in a very obscure niche. And he's not the only person teaching it. He has competitors, and it's totally an automated webinar funnel. And he said, I'm finally ready to create the back end offer. This is when the $250 product is like how to pass the first exam, like the first pilot license test. And he's like, now I'm going to create it for the second level. So that's the back end offer for those existing customers. And he's like, I think it's going to more than double the business. I said, I think you're right. So
no, I'm going to jump in here because this is really exciting to hear about him. So if anyone watched the Rise to Digital CEO last year, Nick was one of the people in the audience. And I remember those who were in the green room with me, we used Nick's case study as an example for doing math in building offers. And Nick sat there in that chair going, it's $97. And it was interesting to watch you coach him through the business model of doing the math to help him get to the goal. So I love hearing the success that Nick's having because his case study was amazing, and he's a great guy.
He was only a couple thousand last year.
Yeah,
but he was already had some, but it was like this sporadic 3,000 to 5,000. Just bouncing around that. But to take that nothing changed. Now that's not true, but it's true. Nothing changed in that he didn't create 10 more offers. He didn't change niches, but he improved and changed what he had in a way that would allow him to attract more and convert more. So he didn't go, oh, it's my offer, I should go in a different niche, which a lot of people do, and they question themselves and get in their head and they keep bouncing around and doing different ideas. He said, no, this is what I'm here to do. So I'm going to do it better. And I'm going to do it with more people. You want to make more money, solve bigger problems, and reach more people. And that's exactly what he did. To go in less than a year and go from, 3 $100,000 a month to $30,000 months. That's life changing.
Yeah.
When he did the episode with me, he's like, I leave tomorrow. I think he's going to Istanbul. And he's like, I'm going to be traveling with my wife for the next 30 days. And it's like, living the freaking dream. And we had another person that I just interviewed that was in the room with us, another live studio audience member, and that was Jess Hughes. And her story comes out it's the 1 year check-in or 11th month check-in, comes out next Wednesday, which I don't know when this episode airs, but next Wednesday for me. So like May something or other, May 14th, May 10th, let's say, something like that, right? So it could be on the podcast by now. Her story is unbelievable. When she came to that live training, she admitted, she goes, I've never told anyone this, but I had $500 to my name. And when I came back, they turned off all of the utilities in my art studio. And I was at risk of the lights getting turned off in my home. She had to call her ex-husband and beg and plead for money to be withdrawn from, an investment account they had. And that was all she had left. And she took one offer and made $168,000 with it in 2 weeks. What? Today, that same offer, she said, is going to be multi-millions. That was last year. This is not even a full year. And she goes, I'm going to end 2023. We are pacing multiple seven figures. Like, are you kidding me?
Fire.
One offer. And the simplicity. We do 10 million a year. And I like to say, it's kind of changed a little bit today. So it's unfair to really say it accurately, but for many years. So I started Business by Design in 2016. And I like to say that it's really one offer in the business that brings it 8 figures. It's Business by Design. And everything I teach, I just put inside of that. It's just one place. It makes things so much easier for everybody. But then I offer a coaching like component to that, so you can get even more assistance. And then at a certain level, people go, I also want to be in a more peer-based mastermind level around that. So in a technical sense, it's like one offer delivered 3 different ways. And that is a $10 million stream. I'm not also going in all these other directions and also teaching Instagram and Facebook ads and all this type of stuff. That would be pulling my focus. That would be taking more time and energy into doing. And where the real money is going to be is when you're done doing, you're done creating, and you switch the Pareto principle, the 80-20, which most people, when they're not making the money they want, they're spending 80% creating and 20% selling. You flip that on its head and you move that to 80% of promoting, launching, selling, whatever you want to call it. You will make a lot more money.
Yeah.
And that means you also don't need as many people. You just need consistent people coming in.
Yeah.
When I talked to Angela Jackson and she's saying, I'm doing $28,000 launches in a month. I said, how many people are coming through your launch? And she said, the last one was our most people we've ever had, 370 people. So she's got 370 people coming into her launch, and she's selling a $2,500 product and she's making 28 grand a month. Like, I will take that. That's freaking awesome.
So you coach a lot of people through this process, right? In Business by Design, and part of the coaching program that you mentioned, Next Level. What advice do you have for the business owners who continually probably make you ram your head in a wall a little bit because they hear the advice and still they want to keep it new and fresh? So if you were to reach for the microphone right now and rattle a little bit, what is the business owner maybe who's listening, they haven't gone through Business by Design, or maybe it's actually one of your prior students who's listening and forgotten about the simplicity piece. What would you say to someone who's really struggling with that jumping and innovating and always wanting to do the new thing?
I say, don't worry. It will get painful enough for you till you finally learn the lesson, and it will. I always love that quote that first God throws a pebble and then a rock. And if you're still refusing to pay attention, you get the big old boulder. I don't want you to ever get the boulder. I've had those. A lot of the stories I share and probably shared last time were a lot of the big ass boulders that I got. Those are painful. but they're also a blessing because the way our human experience works is the pain that we go through forces us to pay attention. It's like it's unavoidable at that point. You get these moments where you go, it's so bad that you get present enough to say, I got to figure this the F out. That's freaking awesome. But I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to have to wait until it gets that painful. So I like to tell my students, like, I'm not really your teacher. Life is. And I'm trying to help you like kind of avoid the big boulders and like, let's just get it when it's a little pebble. But if that's how you want to learn, I promise you and guarantee you, it will get painful enough until you learn it the hard way. So it's really a choice. You want it the easy way, the quicker way, learn it by like trusting somebody or like get it. And the amount of people that come to me and they're like, I finally heard what you're saying because I had to go through it. And man, that I wish I listened sooner. So you're going to get it. You're going to get it one way or another. And how do you want that is up to you. How would you like it served up? On a platter, very gently, or like a punch in the face from the universe. You know what I mean? Because it's painful. And I've had to go through my fair share of those. So there is a level of patience and compassion because I struggled for 5 years myself, 4.5 years, and it was bad. So there's a level of patience and compassion I have for people who are on their own journey and their own pace, and they're going to do it at their own time. But I'm also aware of at the same time that we have egos and we have something I call the guardian of the mind. And the guardian of the mind is this really interesting, fascinating phenomenon of noticing and becoming aware of, and most people are not aware of it. So you could choose to become aware of it now, of this little filter, which I call the guardian, that is standing guard at the entrance to your brain, that is actually sifting, sorting, and deleting and rejecting new and different information. If what I say goes against your building blocks of reality, of your version of truth, then you will reject it. Most likely. Most people do. Nope, don't agree. You hear that right now. As you've been listening to me, or even as you listen to Heather on any podcast, does that make sense? I'm trying to figure this out, what he's saying. Does that mean this? Is that like this other thing I heard? Oh, that's like this. Or I don't agree. No, that's not true. And that's it in action. So it's just about being aware of it because it's unavoidable. You're going to continue to do it for the rest of your life. But here's the really tricky thing. We went and developed. I'm going to go on a tangent here for a moment, Heather. So I hope that's
we're ready. We are so ready for it.
Buckle up, everybody, because here's what happens. We grew up, and as you've heard those like sentiments and comments and observations, like these formative young years where we learn so much about the world and it gets cemented into this is the way the world is. This is what we're going to call our model of reality. You hear those quotes like, give me a child until the age of 7 and I will control the rest of their life, or whatever those things are. And that's because our brain pattern is in a different, more like unconscious, hypnotic, like theta brainwave state where we're like a sponge. And we're in this, what's that question from a young age that we always ask? Why? Well, why are we asking why? Is because we're trying to make meaning of the world. And we're saying, oh, this is like this, and this is like that, and this is it. And we decided what is true, what is false, what is real, what is fake, what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong about all these things. And the world you grew up in is very different, number one, than the world you grew up now. And number two, the world you grew up in was probably, for most of us, not the most conducive or parallel to the world of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs just think differently. They see the world differently. And I always like to say how you see business determines what's possible for you. How you see business will determine what's possible. So you have a version, chances are, I don't want to make any assumptions, but chances are you have a version of reality that has been yours your whole life. That was probably started getting created at a very young age from our upbringing, from our primary caregivers, from our culture, from school and our teachers. And I'm not saying good, bad, right, or wrong. I'm just saying it is. And then we use that as the actual litmus testing criteria for what we agree with or disagree with when new information tries coming in. And there's a lot of things that we were all taught that they're not wrong or bad. Just like if I taught you the rules of basketball, they're not wrong or bad, but they don't really work well when you're playing soccer. You can dribble a ball with your hands in basketball, and you could learn that, but you can't do that with a soccer ball without getting a penalty. right? So in a different context, they're actually not conducive. And the rules of the game of entrepreneurship are very different than a lot of the things that we grew up with. And so, unfortunately, my challenge in life is that I teach all of this stuff. It's met with a ton of resistance to people because they go, no, no, that's not true. I don't agree. That's not been my experience. And their experience is based on that of an employee, a consumer, or definitely someone that is not of an entrepreneurial mindset. And so it's rejected before it can even come in. And so I'm always grew up very entrepreneurial, and people always thought I was very, very weird. I mean, even from a young age, I'm like analyzing marketing campaigns and business strategies. And that's like what I did in my spare time when I wasn't building my own businesses. And I had businesses from the age of like 5 or 6. My first businesses was, yes, the stereotypical lemonade stands, but they grew beyond that too. I was doing all the gardening for all the neighbors and then selling all of the fruit and herbs from their garden and the vegetables back to all the other neighbors. It was a whole thing. It was like this whole internal pyramid scheme I had going on. It was fantastic. You'd pay me to water your garden, and then I would sell all of your avocados to the neighbors down the street. And I had a whole thing going on. But that was like me at 6, right? Ridiculous. So I have a very like weird way in which I see things. And it's very common for when I start sharing these different perspectives, how you see business determines what's possible, that it gets rejected by a lot of people, and that's fine and understandable. But my advice to anybody here, and this has nothing to do with me personally, but my advice to you is that if you're looking at your business and you don't like where your business is, consider for a moment that instead of chasing the next magical strategy that you think is going to wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, 10x your business, consider it's the last place we look, and it's what we see when we look in the mirror, but rather the goggles at which we look at life and business through, that cognitive lens. And it's not until we start to look at things a little differently do those things begin to change, right? And so the invitation is, if you're not happy with where you are in business, but you see somebody as a coach, a mentor, or a guide that is somewhere that you would like to be, to practice at a level that you've never practiced before, a level of open-heartedness and open-mindedness, a level of coachability that would allow you to finally take that little guardian of the mind that's really there from an ego standpoint, is there to protect what it's built as its model of the world. That's its job. Its job is not for you to grow. Its job is not for you to make more money. Its job is there to protect the model of reality that got created, and take that little guard, put it aside, and open up to something completely radically different, to a way of thinking, new ideas, and a new approach coming from that person that you have chosen to say, I'm going to be coachable to that individual. And it's when you do that, and this is what I'm always saying to my students, and you don't have to do that right now to me or anything like that. You can be as skeptical as you want. But when my students come in and they pay a good amount of money to work with me, it would be the craziest thing to say, I'm going to pay this person to invest in my own growth, but I'm not going to listen to them because I know better, because I decided things were true or false about the world way back when. That would be crazy pants. Every time I've invested in somebody, I said, I have to put my ego and my pride aside to open up enough to a new way of doing things. And it's not until we start doing that till we realize I've been thinking about things all wrong. And when I change the way I think about things, I change the way I see them. And when I change the way I see them, those things that I'm looking at truly do become or start to change. That was the late Wayne Dyer that said that. And when they change the way I see them, then I start to approach them differently. I take different actions. I make decisions differently. I approach problems differently. I show up differently. And when you show up differently, the business starts to grow. And yes, I know that's a process, and I know that's hard for a lot of people, but I tend to, be as repetitive as I can with my students so that they can hear it multiple times. But it takes a different approach. It takes a radically different approach in our mindset for business. So here's one example, and then I'll shut up, I promise. And hopefully all that made sense. Business is simple. That is a fact, and I choose to continue to see business as simple every single day. I understand that's not most people's experience, but that just because that's how business occurs to you, it occurs to you as complicated. It occurs to you as intimidating. It occurs to you as just whatever. How it occurs to you has more to do with you than business. How it occurs to you has to do with the way you are choosing to look at it as your subjective reality, not how business actually is. It's just a perspective. You change your perspective and you start to choose is the key word there. Choose to see business as simple. You're going to see it very differently and it will occur to you very differently. Business is very simple. Attract an audience, sell them what they want. That's it. Attract your audience, sell them what they want. We are in a business, of all business, is the business of solving problems. So identify who you want to serve and then just sell them what they want. And you can make business so simple. Business isn't funnels and tech and programming and landing pages and AI and social media and all that type of stuff. Those are tools that you either put in front of you to overwhelm you and complicate you, or they are tools that you use to help you attract your audience and sell them what they want. So how you see business determines what's possible for you. And how you see business is up to you. That is of your choosing. I choose to see it as simple. I choose to see it as fun. I choose to see it as abundant. I choose to see it as a vehicle for service and impact. I choose to see it as a vehicle for financial freedom and abundance, not overwhelming, intimidating, scary, impossible, uphill battle, a prison, something that takes me away from what I like to do in life. And how you see it will determine what you do with it. Does all that make sense?
This is so good. I'm like writing notes down here. I love the theme of simplicity that's woven its way back in throughout this entire conversation.
Yeah.
Comes back to what we started talking about is I think a lot of times in an effort to protect that ego, we make things more complex. That's where we talked about at the beginning of experts. We tend to add complexity to sound smarter. And that actually happens in our own heads too. We think that that might happen in how we explain things, but it also happens to how we explain and justify ideas in our head. And I just love that symmetry. Yeah.
Big.
You know, I want to take this kind of meta here for a moment. We talk a lot about speaking. We talk a lot about showing up here on the show. And a lot of what you were just talking about around how someone sees business, how someone sees themselves and how they show up, and all that like skepticism that happens that we might resist even hearing what you have to say. I think we got to go meta for a moment and put on the hat that our clients or potential customers or potential audience that we're building, they also have all of these same truths. And so I love that what I do, what you do is very, very meta. What do you always say, James? What a meta more, meta, what a more. So
we're going meta, James. What a meta more. Yes.
I have two questions for you. I want to geek out around your method for communication, but one of them is how do you address, or especially at the beginning, because I know now you love to say that you love to jab and poke and really like attack some of these beliefs for people. You're not afraid to shy away from it. But at the beginning, were you ever afraid of like all the yeah buts or the skepticism of people who were looking at you as an expert? How did you deal with that? And what do you say to others who are maybe like, I don't want people to have objections. I don't want to have people to like, I don't know, have any of that skepticism. I want them to love me and believe me right away.
Well, my business went from 280,000 to 1.2 million in 1 year. And again, people want to know what's the secret strategy? And they hate the answer, but I share the answer anyway. I said, the one thing that I can attribute to all of that growth, 280,000 to 1.2 million, that's like 4x in 1 year, was I changed my context of how I showed up from a context of I need to be liked and I need them to like me and my stuff to I don't care if they like me. I'm here to serve them. And everything today is still through that lens, that my intention with any piece of content or whatever I'm doing is to be of service from the highest level that I know how. And I was realizing really quickly that I was doing content to be liked, which is like, I want to say something you already agree with, Heather. I want to say something that will make you like me more. That doesn't help people. If we're just reaffirming what they already know, how does that make any difference? So that's just vanilla, vanilla is just vanilla. And so I had to let go of that ego importance of being liked and whatever, anyone have an opinion. I mean, I really had a hard time with like, what if people don't like me? And that's the most interesting, paradoxical, like thought is like it's so funny. It's like such a cosmic joke. It's like the need to be liked is one of the most unattractive qualities that someone can possess. Everyone's like, oh, she's like a little needy, coming on a little strong. Stop trying so hard. And the inverse is true as well. We admire and are attracted to people that don't care what others think of them. It's an admirable trait. So I replaced the need to be liked with the need to be of service. And that was a game changer. Now let's talk about the objections bit, because this gets really fun. First thing I want to say is the big mistake people are making is thinking that objections mean you did something wrong or objections are bad. Anybody selling anything is going to have objections. So we want to start with this simple premise that objections are inevitable. And I will tell you this, some of my best clients and students, and by best, I mean have the best results, not any other criteria, just that they just like, bam, took it and ran, were those that had some of the biggest objections. So yes, an older version of me used to shy away from objections. Oh no. And today I lean into them and I'm so excited by objections. Here's what an objection is. And you can write this down. Objection is a yes, but. Yes, but. A lot of people who don't understand what objections are think it's a no. No means no. Yes, no does mean no, but an objection does not mean no. An objection is a yes, but. Yes, I want to work with you, Heather, but I'm concerned about blank. That's not a no. That's I really want to take another step forward, but here's where I'm concerned. And 99% of objections, if not all 100%, I want to leave room for margin of error here, but 99% of objections are rooted in some form of fear. So all we're ever doing is working with the people that want to be in our stuff, their yes, and working through their fears and concerns. And we're moving them out of lack and scarcity and fear and worry to a place of possibility, of hope and abundance and personal power. And when you're doing that, you see that what you're really doing is being of service, even in the sales conversation. So my definition of an objection is simply a belief coming from an ideal customer, someone who wants to be in your program. And it's a belief that's preventing them from buying. That's all it is. It's a belief. It's a thought. And it's usually a if this, then that thought. If I do this, then I won't have the time, or I won't have the resources or the money or the this or the that, and I won't be able to. Therefore, I can't buy. These are their fears. These are these concerns. Now, it depends on how far you want to go down the objection train. But if that's helping people and it's like simplifying things, here's where it gets a little tricky. Most objections that you get are clothed or cloaked as questions. So you don't usually get like, Heather, I have an objection to your program. I really want to join, but I am concerned that I don't have a big enough audience that will be able to buy my stuff. Therefore, I'm thinking of not joining. That's usually like not how people communicate. Instead, it could be more like, Heather, how many people do you think you need in your audience before this will really work? Mm-hmm. And it's a question. Mm-hmm. Here's why this is important. A lot of times we don't understand that the question is actually an objection. So we just answer the question, and you can answer the question and not address the objection. And we need to start looking at this as an objection. Well, the good news is, Susie, is that you can start seeing success even if you're starting with no audience. Because part of the program is I'm going to show you how to start building that audience, even if you're started today. And I want to give you a couple of examples of students that have seen success with the program that didn't have an audience when they joined. And now they have the sales, the clients, and they've built a substantial size of audience. I'm assuming you're asking this question because you have a small audience. Is that something you're looking to learn as well? Is for me to teach you how to build that audience on social or ads or whatever? Oh, absolutely. Great. Is there any other questions you have for me? So I'm addressing the objection more than just saying 120 is the number. That didn't address the objection. That answered a question. And they're like, thank you. I have 110, so I guess I'm not ready for your program. And you just lost a sale from someone who needs your stuff. So the objection is the opportunity, and that's the biggest takeaway. And it's someone who's like, I'm in, but I'm scared. So get them out of fear.
Yeah.
And you're going to get the yes.
Okay, this is where spicy coach Heather comes in to do some tough love for those listening on the objections piece.
Uh-oh.
Here's the dichotomy that happens so often with people who want to do speaking, or they get nervous being on video or whatever else, right? I hear from all people all the time. They're like, I'm so good in one-on-one conversations. But when I go to be on camera, like I get all weird and fuddy-duddy, or webinars are hard because it's one-sided. I'm good with the two-way conversations. Yet these, y'all, I'm talking to you, same people who then go, I hate objections. And this is the flip it on the head to double down on what you're saying, James, is objections are a question to start an incredible conversation. Yeah. So for those people who love having conversations with people, when someone asks you an objection, like so we do a lot of our selling for our programs in direct messages. So people send their questions in via DMs and I voice message. And that's where all the selling happens, is you just ask questions from their questions and have, oh my goodness, a conversation. And It is the best way to get started with selling your programs. And I think so many people just want to post it and have the page do the work for them. But oh my gosh, what a gift to be able to have real conversations with people.
Yeah. And I understand that it's awkward when you're doing a webinar. It's just a different style. It's a different thing. And that takes a little bit of time, but it is still a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't want you to forget about. When I'm doing anything live or whatever, I'm having a conversation. And a hack for anybody is, while I'm talking, there's a level of like presence and receptive mode that I keep myself in. And I try to feel the audience's objections in real time. I even do that on a podcast. Like I just said something and you might be like thinking, oh yeah, right, James. I'll say that and be like, now I know what I just said may have brought up some things for you. You might be sitting there thinking da 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 da. Is that anyone thinking that right now? Type in a yes in the chat box. Okay, good. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Let me address that real quick. It's still, you're just kind of like, I'm going to say the part for you that you can't say because you're like,
you're reading their lines, like in a play, you're running lines. Yeah.
And then I'm going back to my own lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's still a conversation. And the more conversational you make it, the better it's going to do. This is a conversation.
That is such a brilliant tactic for anyone who thrives in conversations, but struggles in that one-way delivery piece. The just posing the question on behalf of your audience is such a great technique. I had a client today that they were struggling with a transition in one of the places on their talks. And we literally just posed the transition as a question around like something as simple as, okay, so the question is, where do we go next? And then boom, easy segue. So that question asking piece actually can cover a lot of those awkward transitions, whether it's objections or not. Sometimes you can make it more conversational and keep yourself moving if you're feeling stuck. So I love that you brought up that gem.
So you might be sitting there going, asking yourself or asking me, all right, how much is this? Or what's the price? Or what's the investment? Well, here's the answer.
Yep.
I do that all the time. And I love throwing in, just to add a layer to this, the if this, then that.
Yep.
If you're sitting there asking this, well, or you might be sitting there, try not to like assume that they are. I know you're asking how much. Just say like, all right, you might be sitting there going, all right, James, how much? Well, let me tell you. Or you might be saying, where do we go from here? You might be, or you may be, or if you're asking, where do we go from here? Then let me give you the answer. Let me tell you. And it has a more gentler approach than just like, I know you're asking, where do we go now?
Yeah. Ifs and maybes.
Yeah.
Those are like the best ways. And that also turns it. I know a lot of people are fearful that they don't want to come across as cocky or forceful. And those ifs and thens, what it does is creates that invitation for your audience to participate. It's their opting in, right, to whatever you say next. So I love those.
That's a dance and a balance of like, how do you stand in your power and be confident, but not come off as cocky? And The most important thing I'll tell you is there are people out there that come off as really cocky. And here's what they're doing that they may not even know they're doing. And it's really gross. They think they're better than you. And if you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, yeah, I don't want to come off cocky, you're already a person that has a level of humility where you're not going around thinking you're better than people. So just because I have the mic, just because Heather brought me on and you guys are listening while I get to talk, I am in no way thinking that I'm better than you. What I am thinking is that I've learned some things through my unique lived experiences that only I have learned, that I've only experienced, that could help someone that hasn't learned it. And that's all I'm thinking. I look at it as like we're all on journeys or the same journey of sorts. And some people are a little further ahead. Some people have taken different paths. And some of those people get to say, hey, if you want to come this way, do it like this. And you might want to watch out for that pitfall. And you might want to go around that minefield and do it this way. And that's just people assisting people. Sadly, we exist in an industry where there's a lot of people that are kind of just doing it just for like the fame and the attention. And it like builds up this self-importance and this ego of like, I am so amazing, you will bow to me. And when you're like, I don't want to come off as cocky, it's because you see that and you're like, I definitely don't want to do it that way. But you don't have to. You're just like, hey, I've done a few things. I figured a few things out and I've made a lot of mistakes on the way, and I had a lot of pain, but I figured it out. And if you're still struggling to figure it out, I'm going to help you. So you've all had an experience of helping people, and no one, when you help them, said, that was so cocky of you to help me. That's all we're doing is we're helping people. And that's pretty cool when you get paid for that, you know?
Yeah, it's so freaking cool. I have another communication question for you, kind of on that lens. Well, on a different lens, but one of the things we talked about a lot is that presence, that humility. We also talked a lot about being okay with repetition, right? The simplicity of your offer, but also you mentioned earlier that you say a lot of the same things over and over and over again. And part of that is, right, your students need to hear them over and over again, but also part of that's you sticking with your one thing, your main offer.
Yeah.
James, how do you continually show up and talk about it as if it's the first time you're talking about it, like keeping it exciting, keeping it authentic? It's never sounding rehearsed. What is it about like the way that you speak or the way that you show up or prep yourself that allows you to continue to show up in such a present stance?
There's two answers that I have for you on that. The first one, and I appreciate you asking that because I think that is, well, I see that as a compliment to me. So I'm going to.
It was a compliment. It's you do great.
Nice.
You do great.
Very nice thing of you to say. There's two answers. The first is there is a context through which I look at that, and I say context is defined as a cognitive lens. So how all of it occurs to me, and how it occurs to me is that the giant boulders that I received that were so painful was a really tough 4.5-year journey of nothing. That was really tough for me. I got addicted to Adderall. I dropped down to 140 pounds. I had to move in with mom and dad. I was in debt, overdrawing my bank account, nothing. And I was working 14 hours a day. I had nothing to show for it. And it was bad. And then I contrast that with a life where you're making millions of dollars, to flaunt some math around there for you. And like living a great life and having a lot of fun and doing some really cool stuff and helping a lot of people and doing events and all these. It's like, oh my gosh. And the context is because I went through that pain and I look at that journey, there's these moments, there's these conversations, there's these one little things that other people said that touched me in a way that made me who I am today. And where I hold myself and what I stand for is that anytime I open my mouth, that I have the opportunity to pass that on to somebody else, that there could be one person that even one thing in 90 minutes of talking made a difference for them. And that's always what's at stake. And I never want to forget that. And the day I forget that, I want you to come over and I want you to slap me in the face.
I will do it with one of your guitars.
Yes, because I will deserve that because I feel very grateful. And I feel like it is such a very special privilege and a very important responsibility for what it is that I do. And I do not take it lightly. I like to be light and have a lot of fun, but I do not take that power or that position, because it is a position of power, because you have a lot of people that don't know you that listen to you. And that is a level of power that people are like, I'm open to your perspectives. That's a position of power.
Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly. And I know I could be one sentence away from changing someone's life. Here's the quick one, I promise. Number two is that I always I love language. I love communication. I really love geeking out with it. So I'm always looking for ways to improve how I say something. What's a better metaphor? What's a better way to land this? What's a better way to offer this? And it's my own personal challenges of getting better at effective communication and effective metaphors or stories or whatnot. But it doesn't. And maybe there's a third reason, Heather, that is just maybe because it's your purpose, you just don't ever get bored of it. Maybe because it's when you know it's what you're here to do, it doesn't get old. And maybe if someone out there is doing something and they're sick of it, maybe it wasn't what you're meant to be doing. Maybe it's not your purpose. Maybe there's something else out there, because the moment I found this, I said, I never want to lose this. And I fell in love with it. And I still love it all these years later. And it's just such a joy for me. I have a life outside of it, but it doesn't get old. And I think that's maybe because it's what I'm here to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. And I think at the same point we talked earlier about it being meta, it's for those listening. I think that's the hope for each person, right? To be able to talk about the thing that we do, the thing that we teach, always making it fresh and exciting and connective to our audience so that they can be inspired. So we can say that one thing that really reaches that one person who needs to hear it. So absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way to start wrapping up our episode today. I'm also very impressed with us because we are way ahead of time of our conversation last year. We covered a lot of ground today, but I want to make sure we have time to talk about your upcoming event, the Rise of Digital CEO. We talked about it earlier with Nick and Jess and a few other the studies or the examples you mentioned on the stories today. Can we talk about the Rise of Digital CEO? That is coming on June 1st. Can you share a little bit more about it and who it might be best for?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a 3-part live training I do just once a year. And as I've kind of alluded to, I've built an 8-figure a year business, and it's all around my digital products. I built a business to 1.2 million a year with a $97 online course teaching how to make videos. And that's what I started doing back in 2011. So I have 16 years total of doing this. I got started in 2007, spent a lot of years struggling. So I've been doing this a really long time. And today a big part of the passion and that purpose or that dharma is to help people build that 7-figure business around their digital products. That's what the training's about. I'm basically just pop up the hood of our business and show you how it runs and what we did there. This is not, I'm going to warn you, this is not some fluff, rah motivational, you can do it. We get into it and I show you things that you're going to see. I've been looking at business all wrong. How you see business determines what's possible for you. I think we've been sold on this idea of this internet entrepreneur, this wonderful lifestyle of sipping pina coladas with our laptop on the beaches of the Bahamas or whatever. And most people's lived experience is this business has become like a prison and they're chained to it and it's dragging them down. And the big argument that you're going to see me make a really darn good case for is that it's because most of us as this entrepreneur make really crappy business owners. And my promise to you will be that if I can teach you how to actually run a business like a business, it will fulfill on more of that dream that you were sold of when someone told you, go be an online entrepreneur. This is why we call it the Rise of the Digital CEO. What is needed is not for you to be more entrepreneurial, but it's actually for you to learn how to run a business like a business. When you learn how to run a business like a business, you will get more freedom back in your life. You will see more profitability. You will see more fun, and you'll see more fulfillment. I can guarantee you. I was the stereotypical quintessential entrepreneur, and my business was a mess, and my life was a mess. And when I started saying, I need to figure this thing out, why am I doing this if it doesn't give me anything? If the money that I make goes right back out the door, and the time I have to spend to make it continues to increase, and I have no life outside of it, what is the effing point? Because this is not sustainable. And I'm like, I got to figure this out. So we show you how to rebuild your business from the inside out, like a machine. And it's a machine of 5 gears. And we have to plug in all 5 of these gears so that you start to actually run it like a business. And when you do that, you're going to get what you actually wanted when you signed up and said, I'm going to start this thing in the first place. And that's what we love doing. So it's not just about getting results, it's about getting your life back. That's why it's called business by design, because it's really life by design. It's a business that works well, but also serves you well. In that is of your choosing how you want to do that. And we're just here to show you how it's done.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Get all the details to join us at the Rise of the Digital CEO. I'll put that in the show notes. We'll have links for that. Also have a couple other resources that'll go with what we talked about today. I have to ask this question since this is now officially your first time on the show since we've had the rebrand. The show is all around Hint of Hustle. It's the idea that to achieve big goals, you're going to have to work a little bit, but it doesn't mean you need to work all the time. You ended by saying that the whole idea is to design your business and your life in a way that you really, really want. You can have what you want. I'm curious how you've designed your business these last 10 years, 15 years. What does it create for you in terms of life outside of business? Like, how do you spend your time when you're not working, James?
Well, there's so many things. There's so many things that I do outside of business. First of all, it allowed me to create another business. And that was a really exciting thing is I built another business that was funded by this business. And that's my Airbnb business. So I purchased 4 properties. They've all doubled in value in 2 years. And they bring in over $750,000 in bookings every year. And I completely automated. And that was like the really exciting thing. And now there's this whole opening in other businesses that I want to start. I'm looking at local businesses in Sedona and a few other opportunities, as well as adding to my investment real estate portfolio. So that is like a big piece for me. But I also am someone who loves to have a lot of fun and loves to play. So as you know, and you mentioned guitar, that has been my passion for the past year, is like diving just head deep into learning guitar and music theory. I actually have 2 guitar teachers. So I'm doing lessons twice a week. I think I am up to 12 guitars now at this point. And I also got a drum set and a bass. And I've created a whole music room in my home. And
like a one-man band.
Yeah, I am the one-man band and not very good at it, but I'm learning and I've just been really passionate about that. And that's where a lot of my time is going. Other than that, I've opened up very spiritual. So I have my own spiritual practice that is really near and dear to me. And living out in Sedona, which is what a lot of people will say is a very spiritual and healing and powerful place. I get to live in my dream home in this dream, incredible place and kind of live my simple life. I kind of talk about my version of wealth and success. It looks a lot different. I don't have a Lamborghini or anything like that, but I like to joke and say I do have a $200,000 camper van that I built from scratch. So my cars are a Bronco and a Mercedes camper van with big off-road meaty tires. And that's my version of success. And that's what I love is I do the things that are more function and fun than status or trying to look good, and everyone gets to choose their own. And that's what I really love. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's a really great example to kind of kick what other people our goals, right? They're ours. We get to pick that picture for ourselves. And thank you for sharing your geeky hobbies that we,
yes, they're geeky.
We all have them, which is really great.
I just had it's just posted on stories, but I just got my first DIY guitar kit in the mail today.
Oh my goodness. It's like Legos for guitars.
Yes, it is. So I get to design it. I get to build it. I get to do it's an electric. So I get to put all the electrical stuff into it. A little nervous. It's a little intimidating. The kit just arrived. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. But
all right, friends, if you want to watch James do this, I'm sure he'll be sharing it in his Instagram stories. We're all going to follow along intently as he fumbles his way through it. I want to see the painting part. If I were to do that, it would be like a second grader art project. I'm terrible at that stuff. Yeah. Okay. You're the best, James. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you so much. Y'all be sure to grab the links in the show notes. Also check out our last conversation, episode 151, where you hear more about stepping into that role of the digital CEO. James, you're the best. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Hint of Hustle podcast. If you're in a season of hustle, consider this the permission slip you didn't need to take a beat. Go on a walk, stretch, call a friend, go reheat that coffee for the fourth time and actually drink it. Because those big dreams you're chasing, they require the best version of you. And if those goals include expanding your audience, establishing your industry credibility, and selling your premium price programs, the best way to tackle this is through speaking. Your voice is your best brand asset, and we'll teach you how to use it as a marketing tool. Head on over to thespeakerco.com/start, and I'll see you there.